I am Kiara, 32 years old and a forensic auditor who has spent my entire professional career tracking stolen assets, uncovering corporate fraud, and untangling complex financial webs. I have built my life on logic numbers and the undeniable truth that money always leaves a trail. But nothing in my rigorous training could have prepared me for the ultimate betrayal that unfolded exactly 15 minutes before I was scheduled to be wheeled into an operating room for breast cancer surgery. My husband texted me to say he wanted a divorce because he was not built for a sick wife. I turned to a complete stranger in the adjacent hospital bed and joked that if I survived, he should marry me and help me ruin my husband. The stranger simply said, "Okay." When a nurse froze in sheer terror and asked if I knew who that man really was, I realized my nightmare was about to transform into the most calculated financial takedown imaginable. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to people who drastically underestimated your worth. The pre-op room at the surgical center was freezing, the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead with a sterile hum that made my impending lumpectomy feel even more isolating. The IV needle taped securely to the back of my left hand sent a cold, steady drip of saline into my veins. I sat there shivering beneath a thin, faded hospital gown, waiting for the anesthesiologist to arrive. The cancer diagnosis had derailed my life just 3 weeks prior, instantly turning my organized world of spreadsheets, ledgers, and financial audits into a chaotic blur of oncology appointments, blood draws, and sleepless nights. Through it all, my husband Jamal had promised he would be my rock. He had kissed my forehead that very morning at our sprawling suburban home, adjusting his silk tie and claiming he had to finalize a crucial client portfolio at the high-profile investment firm where he worked as a senior wealth manager. He swore he would arrive at the hospital long before they wheeled me away to surgery. Instead, as the clock ticked down to my operation, my phone vibrated harshly against the plastic hospital tray table. The screen lit up with a text message from him. I swiped open the notification, fully expecting an apology for running late due to morning traffic or a difficult client. The words on the screen hit me with a physical force that knocked the breath completely out of my lungs. "I want a divorce. I am not built for a sick wife. My lawyer is sending the paperwork. Sign it today so we can move on." I stared at the glowing pixels, reading the devastating message again and again, until the letters blurred into a meaningless gray line. After 5 years of marriage, of building a life together, of supporting his relentless corporate climb, while I worked grueling 60-hour weeks tracking corporate embezzlement, this was exactly how he chose to end it. A coward sending a text message delivered 15 minutes before I was about to go under the knife. He was discarding me at the precise moment of my greatest vulnerability, simply because dealing with my potential mortality was too inconvenient for his polished, status-obsessed lifestyle. I did not cry. I refused to shed a single tear for a man who could be so exceptionally callous. Years of dealing with high-stakes corporate audits and surviving my own family, showing relentless emotional manipulation, had trained me to detach my feelings when the pain became too sharp. I forced my breathing to slow, locked the phone screen, and placed the device face down on the tray. Suddenly, a pristine square tissue box slid across the small gap between the hospital beds, stopping right at this edge of my mattress. I looked over, startled by the movement. The patient in the adjacent bay was a sharply dressed African-American man, appearing to be in his late 30s. He was sitting upright, recovering from what looked like a minor biopsy, yet he wore his hospital gown with an undeniable commanding air of authority. His dark eyes were calm, incredibly observant, and completely fixed on me. He had clearly seen my expression crumble when I read the text message. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that scraped against my dry throat. The sheer absurdity of the situation was overwhelming. My own husband was abandoning me via a digital message, while a complete stranger possessed the human decency to offer me comfort. I looked directly at the man, the exhaustion, fear, and boiling anger bleeding into my voice, and made a reckless, sarcastic joke. "If I survive this surgery, marry me and help me ruin him." I expected a polite chuckle, a sympathetic nod, or perhaps an uncomfortable averting of his gaze. Instead, the man held my eye contact without a single trace of amusement. His posture shifted slightly, radiating quiet power, and his voice was smooth, deep, and chillingly serious. Okay, deal. I blinked momentarily, thrown off balance by his absolute intensity. There was no hesitation in his tone, no hint of a joke. Before my exhausted brain could even process his bizarre response, a seasoned triage nurse hurried into our curtained area holding a thick medical clipboard. She checked my heart rate monitors, then glanced over at the man in the next bed. She froze completely in her tracks, the color rapidly draining from her face as her eyes widened in shock. She looked back at me, her voice dropping to a terrified, breathless whisper. "Mom, do you know who Malik is?" I never got the chance to ask her what she meant, or who this mysterious Malik actually was. The heavy double doors of the pre-op ward banged open with jarring force, shattering the quiet atmosphere. Jamal stormed into the room, bringing the arrogant, chaotic energy of his corporate world straight into my sterile sanctuary. He did not look at me with an ounce of concern, nor did he ask the terrified nurse how my vitals were doing. He was flanked by Preston, my sister Chloe, and her white husband, who was a junior partner at a sleazy corporate defense firm and the ultimate enabler of my family behaving toxically. Preston looked entirely too smug to be standing in a hospital ward, carrying a sleek leather briefcase and casually uncapping a silver fountain pen. Jamal marched right up to the side of my bed, his handsome face twisted in annoyance rather than grief or guilt over his text message. He reached into Preston carrying case and shoved a thick stack of legal documents directly into my face. "Sign it, Kiara," he demanded, his voice echoing loudly in the small space. "It is a power of attorney. You are going under anesthesia in 5 minutes, and you have always been too weak to handle real stress. Remember when you choked and lost that prestigious accounting scholarship back in college because you could not handle the pressure? You need me to manage the bank accounts while you are incapacitated." The sheer audacity of his demand washed away any lingering fear I had harbored about the upcoming surgery. He had just texted me demanding a divorce because I was sick, and now he was aggressively trying to seize total control of my financial assets before I was rendered unconscious. He wanted the keys to the kingdom before he locked me out forever. Preston tapped the silver pen against the clipboard, his patronizing smile making the blood boil in my veins. "Just sign the paper, Kiara, so your husband can handle the grown-up business while you rest," he sneered. I looked from Preston and his smug face to Jamal, keeping his cold, calculating eyes on me. My career was built on spotting financial traps, and this was the most glaring red flag I had ever seen. I reached out with my good right arm, grabbed the thick stack of legal documents from Jamal, holding them out, and ripped them straight down the middle in one fluid, forceful motion. I tossed the torn halves onto the linoleum floor right at their expensive leather shoes, just as the surgical orderlies arrived to wheel my bed toward the operating theater. Jamal shouted something furious, his face turning an ugly shade of red, but his angry voice faded as the orderlies pushed me swiftly down the hallway. Just before the heavy doors of the surgical suite swung shut behind me, isolating me from the chaos, I heard Malik speaking into his phone. His voice carried across the room, echoing with absolute, unquestionable command. "Freeze all of Jamal and his brokerage accounts. Immediately." The anesthesia faded like a retreating tide, leaving me stranded on a shoreline of dull, throbbing pain. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights of the recovery room. The sterile smell of iodine and bleached cotton filled my lungs. I expected the quiet solitude of a hospital ward, or perhaps the gentle check-in of a post-op nurse. Instead, the first thing that registered was the sharp, irritated tapping of a designer heel against the linoleum floor. I turned my head slowly. Standing at the foot of my bed were my mother Beatrice and my younger sister Chloe. There were no balloons. There were no modest bouquets of flowers from the hospital gift shop. There was not even a glass of water poured for me. Beatrice stood with her arms crossed over her cashmere cardigan, glaring at me with the exact same expression she used when I spilled juice on her white rug at age 7. She did not ask how the lumpectomy went. She did not ask what the margins looked like or if the surgeon got all the cancer. Her very first words cut straight through the lingering fog of the anesthesia. "Jamal said you tore up the legal papers," Beatrice hissed, stepping closer to the bed. "Why must you always embarrass this family, Kiara? He is a wealthy, successful man dealing with a sick wife. The least you could do is make this transition easy for him." I stared at the woman who gave birth to me. My chest ached where the surgeon had cut into me, but the betrayal in the room hurt infinitely more. It all clicked into place instantly. Jamal had not just ambushed me in the pre-op room. He had called my mother and sister to spin his narrative before the anesthesia had even worn off. He knew exactly how to play them. Beatrice had always worshipped the appearance of wealth and social status. A senior wealth manager like Jamal was her ultimate trophy son-in-law. My value as her daughter was entirely dependent on my ability to keep that trophy polished and sitting on the family mantle. "Sign the house over to him so he can have some peace," Beatrice demanded, her voice dropping into a harsh whisper so the nurses outside the door would not hear. "He told us you are trying to make this difficult out of spite. He is willing to walk away cleanly if you just sign the deed over. Why are you being so selfish?" I looked past my mother to Chloe, the golden child. Chloe was busy checking her reflection in the dark screen of her phone, adjusting a stray curl of her meticulously styled hair. She sighed heavily, acting as if standing in a cancer recovery ward was a personal insult to her schedule. "Honestly, Kiara, this whole medical drama of yours is exhausting," Chloe complained, not even bothering to look up from her phone. "Preston and I have our luxury anniversary trip to Cabo next week. We have been planning it for 6 months. Now Preston is stressing over this divorce mess Jamal dragged him into because you had to throw a fit and tear up a simple power of attorney. You are ruining my vacation vibes." There it was. The action-based backstory of my entire existence laid bare in 2 sentences. Chloe had always been the priority. When I worked 2 jobs to pay my way through college, without a dime of their help, Chloe was given a brand new car for barely graduating high school. When I built my career as a forensic auditor, uncovering corporate fraud, they called my job boring and unladylike. But when Chloe married Preston, a slick corporate attorney who facilitated dirty money, they treated her like royalty. They were currently looking at a woman who just had part of her breast removed, and all they saw was an inconvenience to their social calendars and vacation plans. I realized in that exact moment that my family had completely bought into Jamal and his narrative. They were actively helping my soon-to-be ex-husband steal my assets while I was bleeding on a hospital bed. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. My forensic accounting brain took over, shutting down the emotional response and replacing it with cold, hard logic. I was looking at 2 hostile liabilities. I reached over with my good arm and pressed the red call button taped to the bed rail. A young nurse appeared in the doorway almost immediately. "Is everything all right, Miss Kiara?" the nurse asked, noting the tense atmosphere. "No," I said, my voice raspy but unwavering. "I need security in this room immediately. These 2 women are harassing a patient, and I want them escorted off the premises. They are not to be allowed back on this floor." Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her pearl necklace in absolute shock. "Kiara, you would not dare call security on your own mother. We are family. We share DNA, Beatrice." I corrected her, refusing to use the title of mother. "Family protects each other. You just walked into a cancer recovery ward to act as a collection agent for the man who abandoned me 15 minutes before surgery. Security, now." Chloe scoffed, grabbing her designer purse. "Come on, Mom. Let her wallow in her own misery." Jamal was right. She is going crazy from the medication. We do not need this negative energy. 2 large security guards arrived at the door. Beatrice tried to smooth her cardigan, putting on a fake polite smile for the guards, claiming there was just a misunderstanding, but I simply pointed toward the hallway. The guards kindly but firmly escorted my mother and sister out of the room. I watched them go, feeling the last fraying thread of my familial loyalty snap and dissolve into nothing. I was entirely alone, but for the first time in my life I felt completely free from their toxic expectations. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing the quiet back into the room. I let my head sink into the thin hospital pillow, exhausted but remarkably clear-headed. The silence lasted for exactly 2 minutes before the door handle turned again. I expected the nurse returning to check my vitals. Instead, a man walked into the room. It took my tired brain a second to register who it was. The patient from the bed next to me in the pre-op ward. The stranger who had handed me the tissue box and agreed to marry me and ruin my husband. He was fully discharged now. The flimsy hospital gown was gone, replaced by a bespoke charcoal gray suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. The fabric screamed quiet wealth. A subtle luxury watch gleamed at his wrist. He looked like a man who commanded boardrooms and ended careers before breakfast. He walked over to the side of my bed, his dark eyes just as observant and intense as they had been behind the privacy curtain earlier today. He stood tall, radiating a calm, absolute power that made the sterile hospital room feel like his personal office. "You handle family betrayal with remarkable efficiency," he said, his deep voice smooth and measured. "I am a forensic auditor," I replied, keeping my gaze locked on his. "I cut out bad investments." "Who are you?" He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. "Allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Malik. I am the founder and silent majority shareholder of Apex Financial." My breath caught in my throat. Apex Financial was the exact high-profile wealth management firm where Jamal worked as a senior portfolio manager and where Preston served as in-house corporate counsel. This man was not just a wealthy stranger. He was the ultimate boss of the two men actively trying to destroy my life. Malik pulled a thick, sealed manila envelope from his jacket and placed it gently on my tray table next to my water cup. "I did not take the joke you made earlier lightly, Kiara. When I see an asset being undervalued and discarded, I tend to look into the financials. I ran a quiet audit on your husband while you were under the knife." I stared at the envelope, my professional instincts roaring to life despite the pain medication pumping through my veins. "You audited my husband during my lumpectomy." Malik nodded, not breaking eye contact. "You are an auditor, Kiara. Look at page 4. He is not leaving you because you are sick. He is leaving you because he thinks he just secured a massive payout." I traced the lines of data on the page Malik left on my hospital tray. The black ink spells out a betrayal far deeper than simple infidelity or cowardice. I do not just see numbers. I see the exact moment my husband decided my life was worth less than his next payout. 2 days later, the hospital discharges me. I do not go back to the suburban fortress Jamal and I shared. Instead, a private black car arranged by Malik transports me to a luxury hotel suite downtown, a secure, anonymous penthouse floating high above the city skyline. The physical pain radiating from my chest is a dull, relentless ache, but the adrenaline surging through my veins completely masks it. I drop my overnight bag by the door, ignore the plush, king-sized bed, and immediately open my laptop on the mahogany dining table. I dig straight into the encrypted files Malik provided. He gave me raw, unfiltered data pulled directly from the back end of Apex Financial. "I am a forensic auditor. I track missing millions for breakfast. Untangling my own husband's financial web feels like child's play." My fingers fly across the keyboard, cross-referencing routing numbers and tracing wire transfers. Jamal and Preston thought they were criminal masterminds, but they left a digital trail so wide a novice could follow it. They did not just hide a year-end bonus. They constructed a phantom entity. It is an offshore shell, LLC, registered in Delaware, layered through holding companies in the Cayman Islands, but ultimately tying back to a single tax identification number: Preston's personal ID. I watch the screen in disgust as the full scope of their scheme materializes. They are systematically draining my joint savings, liquidating my stock portfolios, and quietly tapping into the equity line on our house. But the true horror lies in the corporate accounts. They are skimming off the top of Apex Financial's elderly clients. They are slicing fractions of percentages off retirement accounts, pooling that stolen money into the shell company, and washing it clean. Jamal is not divorcing me because he cannot handle a sick wife. He is divorcing me because he is preparing to cash out millions of dollars in stolen funds, and he wants to ensure I have absolutely no legal entitlement to half of his sudden windfall. My phone vibrates against the desk, shattering the quiet of the hotel suite. It is Jamal. He sends an image file followed by a block of text. I open the image. It is a screenshot of our primary joint checking account. The balance displayed is shockingly low, barely enough to cover a week of groceries. Then the text message loads. The medical bills wiped us out. We are completely broke, Kiara. I am doing you a massive favor by taking on the house debt and the underwater mortgage. Sign the settlement paperwork today, or I am formally canceling your health insurance at the end of the month. Good luck paying for your radiation treatments out of pocket. The sheer, unadulterated audacity makes me laugh out loud in the empty room. He actually doctored a bank statement PDF and sent it to a forensic accountant. I can literally see the mismatched pixelation around the numbers. I can see where he used the wrong font weight to alter the balance. He believes I am so terrified by my cancer diagnosis, so thoroughly broken by his rejection, that I will just blindly sign away my life without verifying a single digit. He relies on my fear, completely forgetting my expertise. I do not reply with anger. I do not beg or plead. I pick up my phone and dial Diane. She is a divorce attorney so ruthless her own law partners are terrified of crossing her. I explain the situation with cold clinical precision. There are no tears. There is only strategy. We file for divorce first, preempting his paperwork by a matter of hours. But we do not just file standard papers. I instruct Diane to attach an aggressive forensic discovery motion. It is a legal chokehold designed to suffocate him instantly. We petition the judge to freeze his domestic checking accounts, lock down his personal savings, and temporarily seize his known retirement portfolios. We cut off his legitimate access to cash. Diane listens to my breakdown of the stolen assets and asks if we should include the offshore LLC in the subpoena list. Absolutely not, I tell her firmly. Leave the fraudulent shell company entirely off the paperwork. Do not touch it. Do not let them know I can see it. If we freeze the shell account now, Jamal and Preston will panic, scatter, and destroy the digital evidence before the authorities can intervene. I need them comfortable. I need them arrogant. I want them to believe they successfully hid their golden goose from my legal team. I want them to keep feeding stolen money into that account until the federal wire fraud charges carry a mandatory minimum sentence. Diane chuckles darkly over the line, agrees to the strategy, and hangs up to file the motions. I lean back in the plush hotel chair, pressing a soft ice pack against my surgical incision. The heavy lifting is done for the day. To clear my head, I pick up my phone and open my social media feed. The very first post at the top of my timeline stops my breath. It is my golden child sister Chloe. She is posing in the back of a luxury town car, her perfectly styled hair swept over one shoulder. Draped across her collarbone is a massive, ostentatious diamond tennis necklace that catches the light brilliantly. She is beaming at the camera, wearing the smug expression she has perfected since childhood, the same expression she wore when our mother gave her the bedroom I had painted or the graduation money I had saved. The caption reads, "When your man knows exactly how to treat a queen. Preston always provides for his family. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag upgrade." My eyes narrow as a cold realization washes over me. I pull the laptop closer and cross-reference the timestamp of her post with the financial ledger still open on my screen. Yesterday afternoon, at exactly 4 o'clock, a wire transfer was initiated from the fraudulent LLC to a high-end jeweler in the downtown Diamond District. The amount transferred was $32,500. It was the exact to the penny amount that Jamal had drained from my personal rainy day savings account just last week. Preston and Jamal are not just stealing money to run away and start new lives. They are actively using my stolen marital assets to fund my sister's lavish, arrogant lifestyle while I am recovering from cancer surgery. The betrayal settles deep into my bones, hardening into an unbreakable resolve. They wanted to play a game of wealth and status using my money. Now I am going to make sure they pay for it with their freedom. The soft chime of an incoming email breaks the absolute silence of my hotel suite. I am sitting at the heavy mahogany dining table with a cup of black tea cooling beside my laptop. The pain in my chest from the surgery is a dull throb today, but I ignore it. I click open my inbox and see a message from Preston. My sister Chloe chose to marry a man whose entire personality is built on unearned confidence and a trust fund. Preston is a white corporate defense attorney who thinks he is the smartest person in any room he walks into. He assumes my background as a forensic auditor is just glorified bookkeeping. He is about to learn a very hard lesson. I open the email and the first thing I see is the official logo of his prestigious law firm blazing at the top of the screen. He is actually using his corporate letterhead to send me a personal threat regarding my divorce. The sheer arrogance of it makes me shake my head. I read the text. Preston demands that I vacate my own home by the end of the week. He claims that because Jamal transferred his paycheck into the account that pays the mortgage, I have absolutely no legal right to the property. He threatens that if I try to fight the divorce or demand my share of the marital assets, he will personally sue me for spousal support on Jamal's behalf. He promises to drag the case out in court for years until my remaining accounts are completely drained by legal fees. He tells me I will be left with nothing but medical debt. It is textbook extortion. It is also a massive violation of legal ethics to use corporate resources to bully an opposing party in a domestic dispute. But Preston does not stop at legal threats. He cannot resist taking a personal shot at me. In the final paragraph, he adds a snide remark. He writes that I should just walk away gracefully, because I never understood how real wealth works, just like my father. That sentence makes my fingers freeze over the keyboard. My father was a brilliant, hardworking black man who built a modest accounting practice from the ground up in our community. He worked 12-hour days helping local businesses stay afloat. He did not care about designer suits or country club memberships. My mother Beatrice and my sister Chloe constantly belittled him for it. They wanted fast, flashy money. They wanted the kind of wealth that Preston inherited and Jamal chased. My father taught me everything I know about integrity and the power of financial literacy. Preston bringing my father into this email is a massive mistake. A year ago, I might have cried. I might have drafted a furious emotional reply demanding basic respect. But I am not that woman anymore. I do not reply with anger. I do not reply at all. Instead, I open a new browser window and activate a secure virtual private network. I wrote my connection through an anonymous proxy server. I take a pristine screenshot of Preston and his extortionate email, making sure the timestamp and his corporate law firm logo are perfectly visible. I compile a short clinical message outlining the exact state bar ethics codes he has just violated by threatening to bankrupt a sick woman using his firm official capacity. I attach the screenshot and forward the entire package directly to the Ethical Oversight Committee of the State Bar Association. I do it silently and anonymously. Let him explain to his senior partners why he is using company time to extort his sister-in-law. I barely close the confirmation window when a second email drops into my inbox. Preston is feeling incredibly bold today. This time he has copied Jamal on the message. I open it and find a wall of text dripping with mockery. Preston has just received a copy of the forensic discovery motion my attorney Diane filed earlier today. He is openly laughing at it. He calls my legal team amateur and pathetic. He boasts that his and Jamal finances are completely airtight and untouchable. He writes that freezing Jamal domestic checking accounts is a cute trick, but it will not stop them because they are 10 steps ahead of me. They are celebrating. They are virtually high-fiving each other in this email thread because they looked at my discovery motion and saw that the offshore Delaware Limited Liability Company was not listed anywhere on the subpoena. They think Diane and I are financially illiterate. They think we missed their massive embezzlement ring. They genuinely believe they have outsmarted a woman who tracks hidden corporate assets for a living. I sit back in my plush hotel chair and smile. A genuine wide smile spreads across my face for the first time since my cancer diagnosis. This is the exact psychological reaction I wanted. Arrogance breeds complacency. When men like Jamal and Preston believe they are the smartest people in the room, they get sloppy. They let their guard down. They start making careless mistakes. I switch my laptop screen away from my email inbox and open the encrypted access portal that Malik provided for me. I type in the multi-factor authentication codes and bypass the security firewalls of Apex Financial. The back-end ledger of their investment firm loads onto my screen in real time. I navigate directly to the hidden offshore shell account registered under Preston and his name. The account they are using to launder my stolen marital assets and the money they skimmed from their elderly clients. I start up my screen monitoring software. A small red recording dot blinks in the corner of my display, capturing every single movement on my screen. I watch the live feed of the ledger. I know exactly what is going to happen next. Preston and Jamal are riding a high of false confidence. They think my legal team is incompetent. They think their money is perfectly safe in the shadow account. And because Jamal's domestic accounts are frozen, he is going to panic about his cash flow. He needs liquid capital to fund his new bachelor lifestyle and keep my sister happy. Right on cue, the numbers on the screen begin to shift. A pending transaction appears in the queue. I lean closer to the monitor, watching the digital fingerprints form right in front of my eyes. Jamal is initiating a new wire transfer from his internal corporate portal. He is moving money out of a vulnerable client portfolio and sending it straight into the Delaware Shell Company. I watch the amount populate on the ledger, $100,000. They are so confident that I am blind to their crimes that they are actively moving six figures in broad daylight. They think they are walking away with a fortune, but they are actually walking right into my trap. I hit save on the screen, recording capturing the exact second the wire transfer clears the system. They have just handed me federal evidence on a silver platter. I save the screen recording of the $100,000 transfer securely to an encrypted cloud server. The video file captures the exact second Jamal and Preston move the funds into their offshore Delaware shell company. That single piece of digital evidence is enough to guarantee federal wire fraud charges, but I am not finished. Now that I know exactly how their pipeline operates, I need to see how deep the rot actually goes. I pull the laptop closer to me on the heavy mahogany dining table of my hotel suite. The dull, persistent ache in my chest from the lumpectomy is completely overshadowed by the sharp electric adrenaline pumping through my veins. I open the secure, encrypted access portal that Malik provided. The interface is stark and utilitarian, a raw database that strips away the flashy, colorful graphs that wealth managers usually show their clients to keep them complacent. This is the nervous system of Apex Financial, and I have the keys to the kingdom. I cross-reference the routing numbers from Preston and his shell company against the entire client roster of the firm. I write a custom auditing script, a digital hound designed to sniff out anomalies and unauthorized asset siphoning. It takes my software less than 4 minutes to find the matching data points. The screen populates with hundreds of microtransactions. I lean closer to the monitor, my eyes scanning the names attached to the drained accounts, and my blood runs absolutely cold. Jamal is not just hiding our marital assets to cheat me out of a fair divorce settlement. He is running a massive, systematic, and predatory skimming operation. I open the individual client profiles, and the reality of his sociopathy hits me like a physical blow. The names staring back at me are not faceless billionaires or nameless hedge funds. They are people from our own neighborhood. I see the retirement account of Mrs. Higgins, a retired school principal who sits 2 pews behind us at church every Sunday. I see the joint savings of Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, an elderly couple who have owned the local bakery in our community for 40 years. Jamal specifically targeted the nest eggs of older African American clients. These are people who trusted him implicitly because he looked like them, spoke like them, and shook their hands with a warm, winning smile at community events. He sold them the illusion of Black excellence and generational wealth, assuring them their life savings were safe in his hands. Instead, he is bleeding them dry. He is shaving off fractions of a percent from their quarterly yields, burying the theft under dense, intentionally confusing administrative fee codes. He takes just enough to avoid triggering automated banking alerts, but over dozens of accounts, those fractions add up to millions. He then funnels that stolen cash straight into the offshore account that Preston manages. My husband is not just a coward who abandons his wife before cancer surgery. He is a parasite feeding on the very community that celebrates him. The disgust settles heavy in my stomach, quickly hardening into an unbreakable resolve. I am going to tear his entire world apart. My phone vibrates aggressively against the table, shattering the quiet of the hotel suite. The caller ID displays Jamal. I let it ring 3 times, taking a slow, measured breath to ensure my heart rate is perfectly steady. I hit accept and bring the phone to my ear. I do not say hello. I just listen. The background noise is unmistakable. I can hear the clinking of fine crystal, the low murmur of affluent conversation, and the soft jazz of a high-end restaurant. Jamal is likely at Del Frisco's or Capitol Grill trying to impress a new client, or perhaps treating his mistress to a lavish afternoon meal. But his voice is not smooth or charming. It is a harsh, embarrassed, furious hiss. Kiara, what did you do? He demands, his tone vibrating with barely contained rage. I just tried to pay the bill for a business lunch and my platinum card was declined right in front of my clients. I tried my debit card and the system said the account was frozen. What kind of stunt are you pulling? I keep my voice entirely deadpan, devoid of any emotion. It is called a forensic discovery motion, Jamal. When a husband demands a divorce via text message, while his wife is waiting for the anesthesia to kick in, the wife and her attorney tend to lock down the marital assets. You should ask your brilliant brother-in-law about it. I am sure Preston can explain the legal definition of an asset freeze to you. Jamal practically growls into the receiver. You think you are so smart. You think this little accounting trick is going to save you. You are nothing but dead weight, Kiara. You have been dead weight since the day you got sick, and I am done carrying you. Do you hear me? If you do not call your lawyer and unfreeze my accounts by 5 o'clock today, I will absolutely ruin you. Ruin. He takes a breath, his voice rising just enough to let me know he is losing control in a public setting. I will go to the country club. I will go to the church. I will tell everyone that the cancer treatments went to your brain. I will tell them you are unstable, paranoid, and financially abusive. I will spin a story so convincing that your own family will back me up. I will drag your name through the mud until nobody in the city will even look at you, let alone hire you for an audit. You will be left with nothing but your medical debt and a ruined reputation. He pauses, waiting for my reaction. He expects me to cry. He expects me to beg him not to humiliate me socially. He is relying on the same fear of public embarrassment that controls my mother and my sister. I do not defend myself. I do not argue. I simply pull the phone away from my ear and press the red button hanging up on him mid-breath. I drop the device onto the table and turn my attention back to the glowing screen of my laptop. Jamal wants to talk about ruining reputations and causing public humiliation. I can destroy his entire reality without ever stepping foot outside this hotel suite. I navigate away from the client ledgers and open the internal compliance dashboard of Apex Financial. Because Malik granted me top-tier administrative override, I have full access to the automated regulatory triggers that monitor the firm and its employees. The financial industry is heavily regulated, and compliance departments are notoriously ruthless when dealing with potential ethical violations. I type Preston and his employee identification number into the search bar. His smug corporate profile picture pops up on the screen. I bypass the standard review options and select a silent alert. I flag his state bar license and his internal legal conduct for an immediate mandatory review due to suspected ethical violations and unauthorized offshore account management. Next, I pull up Jamal and his profile. I select his Series 7 trading credentials and flag them for a randomized high-priority compliance audit regarding irregular administrative fee deductions. I do not lock them out of the system. I do not freeze their access to the corporate portal. That would be too obvious. Instead, I just set the bureaucratic wheels of their own company in motion. By tomorrow morning, the compliance department at Apex Financial will send them both a highly urgent, very formal email. The email will request a full detailed review of their recent trades client fee structures and legal filings. They will be required to sit in a glass conference room and explain their actions to a team of internal investigators. They will have to scramble to produce clean paperwork, sweat through interrogations, and fabricate explanations, all while knowing they are secretly operating a multi-million-dollar embezzlement ring right under the nose of their employers. They will have to lie to the very people who have the power to strip them of their licenses and refer them to the authorities. I smile, logging out of the compliance portal and closing my laptop. Jamal threatened to make me look paranoid, but by tomorrow he is the one who will be looking over his shoulder. The asset freeze on his checking account was just a minor inconvenience to hurt his pride at a restaurant. The silent compliance alert is a ticking time bomb placed directly under his career. Let them sweat. Let them panic. The psychological warfare has officially begun. The morning sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my hotel penthouse, but the warmth does not reach me. I am sitting at the dining table nursing a cup of green tea and waiting for the internal compliance alarms at Apex Financial to detonate. My laptop screen is open to a blank spreadsheet. I am ready to catalog the fallout. Instead, the sleek telephone on the marble kitchen island chimes. It is the downstairs concierge. He tells me my mother is waiting in the lobby demanding to be let up to see her sick daughter. I stare at the phone for exactly 3 seconds. Beatrice does not do spontaneous welfare checks. Beatrice does appearances. She does calculated social maneuvering. If she is here, it is because Jamal sent her. I tell the concierge to send her up. I want to see exactly what play my soon-to-be ex-husband is running today. The private elevator doors slide open, and my mother steps directly into the suite. She is dressed as if she is attending a high-society charity luncheon rather than visiting a cancer patient. She wears a tailored tweed suit, her hair perfectly pressed and her neck draped in heavy pearls. She carries a designer tote bag on one arm and a stainless steel thermos in the other hand. She puts on a performance of maternal distress that could win an award, sighing heavily as she places the thermos on the counter. "I brought you some homemade chicken soup, Kiara," she says, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. A mother always knows when her baby needs her. "You should have told us where you were staying. We have been worried sick about you." I do not stand up to greet her. I remain seated at the table, watching her eyes dart rapidly around the luxurious room. She is taking inventory. She is calculating the cost of the penthouse, the brand of the espresso machine, the thread count of the curtains. She is trying to figure out who is funding my sudden disappearance. "Thank you for the soup," I say, my voice flat and completely devoid of emotion. "How did you know I was here?" Jamal told me. Beatrice sighs, pulling out a velvet chair and sitting across from me. She reaches out to pat my hand, but I smoothly pull it away to pick up my tea. "Kiara, you are acting completely irrational. The surgery trauma has clouded your judgment. Jamal is a good, successful black man. Do you know how hard it is to find a provider like him in our community? He made a mistake, but you are punishing the entire family with this asset freeze. You are making a public spectacle of your marriage." I take a slow sip of my tea. My eyes never leave her face. "Jamal texted me for a divorce 15 minutes before they put me under anesthesia. He shoved legal documents in my face while I was in a hospital gown. He did not make a mistake, Beatrice. He made a business decision." Beatrice waves her hand dismissively, exactly as she did when I used to complain about Chloe stealing my allowance money in high school. "You always exaggerate things. You have always been entirely too rigid. Jamal is under immense pressure at the firm. You need to drop this aggressive legal nonsense, go back home and be a supportive wife. Let him handle the accounts. You just need to focus on resting." While she speaks, her hands are not still. She stands up again, claiming she wants to tidy the room for me because sick people should not live in clutter. She begins pacing around the suite, straightening magazines, aligning coasters, and moving progressively closer to my workstation. I track her movements with the precision of a hawk. On the far corner of the mahogany desk sits a small stack of incoming mail I had forwarded from the house. Resting on top of those envelopes is a dull silver key. It is the key to my personal safe deposit box at a private bank downtown. Malik explicitly told me to guard it because it contains the encrypted hard drives with the offline backups of Jamal and Preston embezzling the client funds. Beatrice chatters endlessly about how stressed Chloe is about her pregnancy, how Preston is working so hard to provide, and how my selfishness is causing a rift in the family. She shuffles the stack of mail. I watch her manicured hand cover the silver key. In one fluid, practiced motion, she slides the key off the desk and drops it directly into the open pocket of her designer tote bag. She turns back to me wearing a bright, innocent smile. Now, why do not you give me the contact information for your lawyer so I can tell them to halt this ridiculous discovery motion? I set my teacup down. The porcelain clinks sharply against the saucer. Put it back on the desk, Beatrice. Her smile falters, but she instantly recovers her posture, stiffening with practiced indignation. Put what back, Kiara? I am just trying to clean up your mess. The safe deposit box key you just slipped into your purse. Put it back. Now. Beatrice clutches her bag to her chest, looking deeply offended. How dare you accuse your own mother of stealing? You are delusional from the pain medication. This is exactly what Jamal warned me about. You are losing your grip on reality. I do not argue. I do not raise my voice. I simply reach over to my printer, which I had churning out documents all morning, and pull the top sheet of paper from the tray. I slide it across the smooth surface of the dining table until it stops right in front of her. I am not losing my grip on reality, I say coldly. I just have a much better view of the ledger than you do. Look at the paper. Beatrice glances down. It is a certified bank routing receipt I pulled from the firm back end. The transfer is dated yesterday afternoon. The amount is $82,000. The recipient is Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. The sender is the offshore Delaware shell company Jamal and Preston operate. You came here to steal my safe deposit box key because Jamal asked you to. I state the facts with surgical precision, and he paid you for your services. He paid off the auto loan on your brand new luxury SUV yesterday using stolen money. You sold out your own daughter recovering from cancer surgery for a car. The color drains entirely from my mother's face. Her mouth opens and closes as she stares at the undeniable proof of her transaction. The maternal facade completely evaporates, leaving behind the cold, calculating woman who has treated me like a disappointing financial asset my entire life. She realizes she cannot gaslight a woman holding the receipts. Beatrice drops her tote bag onto the chair. Her expression hardens into a vicious sneer, and the ugly truth of our family dynamic finally explodes into the open air. You listen to me, you ungrateful little witch. She spits, her voice trembling with raw venom. You are sick and you are barren. You have brought absolutely nothing to this family but medical bills and boring lectures about saving money. Chloe is actually giving us a legacy with her beautiful children. Preston and Jamal are providing real wealth for this family. They are elevating our status in this city, and you are trying to tear it all down because you are a jealous, bitter woman. The words hit me directly in the chest, a psychological blow designed to shatter me. She throws my fertility issues and my cancer diagnosis in my face like weapons to protect the men who are financing her lifestyle. A year ago, this would have destroyed me. I would have internalized the blame and tried to fix myself to earn her love. But sitting in this penthouse holding the keys to their destruction, I feel absolutely nothing but clarity. The toxic umbilical cord is permanently severed. Do not ruin this, Kiara, Beatrice demands, stepping forward and pointing a manicured finger at my face. You will sign the house over to Jamal and you will drop this lawsuit, or you will be entirely dead to this family. I stand up, ignoring the sharp pull of the surgical incision in my chest. I walk straight into her personal space, towering over her. She takes a nervous step back, intimidated by the absolute absence of fear in my eyes. I reach directly into her open designer tote bag, retrieve my silver safe deposit box key, and drop it into my own pocket. Then I walk to the heavy suite door and pull it wide open, exposing the hotel hallway. You were dead to me the second you walked into this room holding a price tag on my life. I say, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. I am going to dismantle your son-in-laws. I am going to expose their theft, and I am going to watch the federal government seize every single asset bought with stolen money. That includes your precious new car, Beatrice. She stares at me, her chest heaving with outrage and a sudden creeping panic. She opens her mouth to scream another insult, but I do not give her the oxygen. Get out of my suite, I command. Beatrice snatches her bag from the chair and marches out into the hallway, her heels clicking furiously against the carpet. She turns back to deliver one last threat, but I slam the heavy door shut right in her face. I slide the deadbolt into place. I pull my phone from my pocket open. My contacts navigate to her name and hit block. I do not block her temporarily. I block her permanently. I walk back to the dining table, sit down, and open my laptop. I have a corporate empire to burn to the ground. I am Kiara, 32 years old, and a forensic auditor who has spent my entire professional career tracking stolen assets, uncovering corporate fraud, and untangling complex financial webs. I have built my life on logic numbers and the undeniable truth that money always leaves a trail. But nothing in my rigorous training could have prepared me for the ultimate betrayal that unfolded exactly 15 minutes before I was scheduled to be wheeled into an operating room for breast cancer surgery. My husband texted me to say he wanted a divorce because he was not built for a sick wife. I turned to a complete stranger in the adjacent hospital bed and joked that if I survived, he should marry me and help me ruin my husband. The stranger simply said, "Okay." When a nurse froze in sheer terror and asked if I knew who that man really was, I realized my nightmare was about to transform into the most calculated financial takedown imaginable. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to people who drastically underestimated your worth. The pre-op room at the surgical center was freezing, the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead with a sterile hum that made my impending lumpectomy feel even more isolating. The IV needle taped securely to the back of my left hand sent a cold, steady drip of saline into my veins. I sat there shivering beneath a thin, faded hospital gown, waiting for the anesthesiologist to arrive. The cancer diagnosis had derailed my life just 3 weeks prior, instantly turning my organized world of spreadsheets, ledgers, and financial audits into a chaotic blur of oncology appointments, blood draws, and sleepless nights. Through it all, my husband Jamal had promised he would be my rock. He had kissed my forehead that very morning at our sprawling suburban home, adjusting his silk tie and claiming he had to finalize a crucial client portfolio at the high-profile investment firm where he worked as a senior wealth manager. He swore he would arrive at the hospital long before they wheeled me away to surgery. Instead, as the clock ticked down to my operation, my phone vibrated harshly against the plastic hospital tray table. The screen lit up with a text message from him. I swiped open the notification, fully expecting an apology for running late, due to morning traffic or a difficult client. The words on the screen hit me with a physical force that knocked the breath completely out of my lungs. I want a divorce. I am not built for a sick wife. My lawyer is sending the paperwork. Sign it today so we can move on. I stared at the glowing pixels, reading the devastating message again and again, until the letters blurred into a meaningless gray line. After 5 years of marriage, of building a life together, of supporting his relentless corporate climb, while I worked grueling 60-hour weeks, tracking corporate embezzlement, this was exactly how he chose to end it. A coward sending a text message delivered 15 minutes before I was about to go under the knife. He was discarding me at the precise moment of my greatest vulnerability, simply because dealing with my potential mortality was too inconvenient for his polished, status-obsessed lifestyle. I did not cry. I refused to shed a single tear for a man who could be so exceptionally callous. Years of dealing with high-stakes corporate audits and surviving my own family, showing relentless emotional manipulation, had trained me to detach my feelings when the pain became too sharp. I forced my breathing to slow, locked the phone screen, and placed the device face down on the tray. Suddenly, a pristine square tissue box slid across the small gap between the hospital beds, stopping right at the edge of my mattress. I looked over, startled by the movement. The patient in the adjacent bay was a sharply dressed African-American man, appearing to be in his late 30s. He was sitting upright, recovering from what looked like a minor biopsy, yet he wore his hospital gown with an undeniable commanding air of authority. His dark eyes were calm, incredibly observant, and completely fixed on me. He had clearly seen my expression crumble when I read the text message. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that scraped against my dry throat. The sheer absurdity of the situation was overwhelming. My own husband was abandoning me via a digital message, while a complete stranger possessed the human decency to offer me comfort. I looked directly at the man, the exhaustion, fear, and boiling anger bleeding into my voice, and made a reckless, sarcastic joke. If I survive this surgery, marry me and help me ruin him. I expected a polite chuckle, a sympathetic nod, or perhaps an uncomfortable averting of his gaze. Instead, the man held my eye contact without a single trace of amusement. His posture shifted slightly, radiating quiet power, and his voice was smooth, deep, and chillingly serious. Okay. Deal. I blinked momentarily, thrown off balance by his absolute intensity. There was no hesitation in his tone, no hint of a joke. Before my exhausted brain could even process his bizarre response, a seasoned triage nurse hurried into our curtained area holding a thick medical clipboard. She checked my heart rate monitors, then glanced over at the man in the next bed. She froze completely in her tracks, the color rapidly draining from her face as her eyes widened in shock. She looked back at me, her voice dropping to a terrified, breathless whisper. "Mom, do you know who Malik is?" I never got the chance to ask her what she meant or who this mysterious Malik actually was. The heavy double doors of the pre-op ward banged open with jarring force, shattering the quiet atmosphere. Jamal stormed into the room, bringing the arrogant, chaotic energy of his corporate world straight into my sterile sanctuary. He did not look at me with an ounce of concern, nor did he ask the terrified nurse how my vitals were doing. He was flanked by Preston, my sister Chloe, and her white husband, who was a junior partner at a sleazy corporate defense firm and the ultimate enabler of my family behaving toxically. Preston looked entirely too smug to be standing in a hospital ward carrying a sleek leather briefcase and casually uncapping a silver fountain pen. Jamal marched right up to the side of my bed, his handsome face twisted in annoyance rather than grief or guilt over his text message. He reached into Preston carrying case and shoved a thick stack of legal documents directly into my face. "Sign it, Kiara," he demanded, his voice echoing loudly in the small space. "It is a power of attorney. You are going under anesthesia in 5 minutes, and you have always been too weak to handle real stress. Remember when you choked and lost that prestigious accounting scholarship back in college because you could not handle the pressure? You need me to manage the bank accounts while you are incapacitated." The sheer audacity of his demand washed away any lingering fear I had harbored about the upcoming surgery. He had just texted me demanding a divorce because I was sick, and now he was aggressively trying to seize total control of my financial assets before I was rendered unconscious. He wanted the keys to the kingdom before he locked me out forever. Preston tapped the silver pen against the clipboard, his patronizing smile making the blood boil in my veins. "Just sign the paper, Kiara, so your husband can handle the grown-up business while you rest," he sneered. I looked from Preston and his smug face to Jamal, keeping his cold, calculating eyes on me. My career was built on spotting financial traps, and this was the most glaring red flag I had ever seen. I reached out with my good right arm, grabbed the thick stack of legal documents from Jamal, holding them out, and ripped them straight down the middle in one fluid, forceful motion. I tossed the torn halves onto the linoleum floor right at their expensive leather shoes, just as the surgical orderlies arrived to wheel my bed toward the operating theater. Jamal shouted something furious, his face turning an ugly shade of red. But his angry voice faded as the orderlies pushed me swiftly down the hallway. Just before the heavy doors of the surgical suite swung shut behind me, isolating me from the chaos, I heard Malik speaking into his phone. His voice carried across the room, echoing with absolute, unquestionable command. "Freeze all of Jamal and his brokerage accounts, immediately." 48 hours after throwing my mother out of my hotel suite, I step out of a private black car and look up at the towering glass facade of the Apex Financial headquarters. The morning air is brisk, but I do not shiver. The dull ache in my chest from the surgical incision has faded to a manageable tightness, a physical reminder that I survived the worst they could throw at me. I adjust the collar of my tailored crimson blazer, feeling a renewed surge of energy coursing through my veins. For years, I walked past corporate buildings, just like this one, carrying the weight of my family demands and my husband's fragile ego. Today I am walking into the epicenter of their fraudulent empire, and I am holding the matches. I bypass the standard security desk in the grand lobby. The head of security, a stoic man in a dark suit, immediately steps forward and addresses me by name. He escorts me to a private express elevator, scanning a secure keycard that grants access to the executive penthouse level. Malik arranged everything. As the elevator rapidly ascends, my mind operates with absolute razor-sharp precision. The fog of betrayal and cancer treatments has completely evaporated. I am stepping onto the battlefield, not as a wounded wife, but as a highly trained forensic auditor ready to execute a flawless financial takedown. The elevator doors slide quietly open to reveal a sprawling executive suite. The floor is lined with dark oak and floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a commanding view of the entire city. At the far end of the room sits a massive slate conference table. Malik is standing by the window looking over the financial district. He is wearing a midnight blue suit that exudes quiet, uncompromising power. When he hears my footsteps, he turns around and his dark eyes immediately lock onto mine. The shift in the room is instantaneous. There is an undeniable tension between us, a heavy magnetic pull grounded in deep mutual respect. This is not some fragile fairy tale romance. It is an alliance forged in fire and a shared thirst for absolute justice. "You look incredible, Kiara," Malik says, his deep voice echoing slightly in the vast room. He walks toward me, offering a warm, firm handshake that lingers just a second longer than strictly professional. He guides me to the plush leather chairs at the head of the boardroom table. "I see you have been busy. The compliance department has been running around like headless chickens since yesterday morning." I take a seat and offer a cool, clinical smile. "I told you I track corporate fraud for a living. I just pointed your automated compliance software in the right direction. Have they questioned Jamal and Preston yet?" Malik nods, taking the seat right next to me. The proximity sends a subtle jolt of adrenaline through my system. "They pulled Preston into a glass conference room at 8 o'clock this morning. They are grilling him on his offshore accounts and demanding to see the paperwork for his external legal filings. Jamal is currently sweating through an audit of his administrative fee structures. They are both panicking, trying to fabricate a paper trail that does not exist. It is a beautiful thing to watch." Malik leans closer, his gaze intense and unwavering. He places his hands flat on the polished slate table. "I can end this right now, Kiara. I can walk down to the trading floor, strip them of their security badges, and fire them both in front of the entire company. I can have security toss their belongings onto the sidewalk and ensure they never work in the financial sector again. Just give me the word and it is done." It is a tempting offer. The thought of Jamal being publicly humiliated and marched out of the building he treated like his personal kingdom is incredibly satisfying. But my analytical brain kicks in, instantly running the long-term projections of that scenario. I shake my head, rejecting the immediate gratification for a much larger prize. "Firing them is not enough," I say, my voice steady and cold. "If you fire them today, they will just scramble. They will liquidate that offshore Delaware shell company, bounce the funds through a cryptocurrency mixer, and vanish. They will hire aggressive defense attorneys and try to tie us up in civil litigation for the next decade. I do not just want them unemployed, Malik. I want them in a federal penitentiary. I want the money they stole from those elderly clients fully recovered, and I want my sister and my mother to realize exactly what kind of criminals they sold me out for." Malik watches me carefully, a slow, appreciative smile spreading across his handsome face. He leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I knew I chose the right partner for this. You do not just want to win the game, you want to burn the entire board. So tell me the strategy. How do we ensure they trade their tailored suits for federal prison uniforms?" I open my laptop and connect it to the massive digital display screen mounted on the boardroom wall. "We use their arrogance against them." I explain, bringing up the internal architecture of the Apex financial trading platform. Right now, Jamal is terrified. His personal checking accounts are frozen because of my divorce discovery motion. His credit cards are declining. Preston is draining their hidden cash reserves to pay for my sister's expensive lifestyle and trying to cover his tracks with the compliance department. They are bleeding liquidity, and they are desperate. Desperate men looking for an exit strategy will always take the bait if you make it look shiny enough. Malik nods, tracking my logic perfectly. You want to set a trap, a honeypot account. Exactly. I type a series of commands into the terminal, bringing up the firm dormant account registry. We hatch a plan to create a massive dummy portfolio deep inside the firm backend. We need to construct a digital ghost. It needs to look like an account belonging to a highly wealthy international client who recently passed away. We will code it to appear entirely stuck in a probate holding pattern neglected by the primary oversight committee and packed with highly liquid assets. Malik steps up to the screen, standing shoulder to shoulder with me. We can use an old corporate trust structure. He suggests, his mind working in perfect synchronization with mine. I will authorize an administrative override to bypass the daily risk management flags. We will fund it with fake internal ledger credits. On paper, it will look like there is $2.5 million in raw, untraceable cash just sitting there waiting to be claimed. I look up at him, my heart beating a little faster at the sheer brilliance of the setup. It is the perfect bait. Jamal has spent the last 3 years skimming fractions of pennies from retirement accounts because he is too much of a coward to make a big move. But right now, he needs a massive payout to fund his getaway and pay off whatever shady debts Preston has accumulated. If he thinks he found an orphaned account with millions of dollars just floating in the digital ether, his greed will completely override his caution. We spend the next 2 hours coding the fake portfolio. We build the architecture with meticulous care, ensuring every digital footprint looks like a legitimate administrative oversight. We pad the account with realistic transaction histories, fake tax identification numbers, and dummy contact information. It is a masterpiece of forensic engineering. When the structure is perfectly solid, we reach the most critical phase of the operation. We cannot just leave the account floating in the general registry. We need to put it directly in front of his face. I wrote the assignment protocol on the screen. We are going to assign this fake portfolio directly to Jamal's specific internal employee dashboard. I say, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. We will code the transfer to look like a temporary server glitch. It will just pop up on his screen labeled as an unassigned high-yield trust. He will see the $2.5 million balance. He will see that there is no active manager assigned to it. He will think the universe just handed him the ultimate lottery ticket right when he needed it most. Malik places his hand gently over mine, resting on the keyboard. His palm is warm, sending a comforting, grounding energy through my body. Once we push this to his desk, the clock starts ticking. He says, his voice low and serious. If he takes the bait and attempts to wire those funds to his offshore LLC, he crosses the line from corporate theft to federal wire fraud. There is no coming back from that. I look down at our hands and then up into his dark, supportive eyes. The man my husband abandoned me for being too sick has just handed me the weapon to execute absolute justice. I am not looking for him to come back. I say, my voice ringing with total conviction. I am looking for him to go away for a very long time. I press the enter key. The screen flashes green as the secure command processes through the corporate mainframe. The digital package zips through the internal servers, bypassing the standard filters and landing silently in the targeted destination. The multi-million-dollar dummy portfolio is now sitting squarely on Jamal's trading desk, completely unmonitored and packed with liquid assets. It is the perfect bait for a greedy, desperate man trying to secure a final payout before his divorce goes to court. The trap is officially set. Now we simply sit back and watch the rat take the cheese. The Oak Ridge Country Club smells of old money, imported orchids, and sheer audacity. I step out of the town car Malik arranged for me, my heels clicking sharply against the cobblestone driveway. The valet stares, momentarily caught off guard. I am not wearing the muted, depressing tones my family expects from a sick, discarded woman. I am wearing a tailored emerald green designer gown that cost more than my mother's first car. Every stitch was paid for by my own thriving forensic consulting firm. My chest still carries the tight ache of my recent surgery, but my posture is immaculate. I am not a victim arriving to beg. I am an auditor arriving to collect. I walk through the grand double doors of the country club and follow the signs directing guests to the grand ballroom for Chloe and her baby shower. The extravagant display hits me before I even cross the threshold. The room is drowning in cascading floral arrangements, a towering six-tier cake covered in edible gold leaf, and a live string quartet playing in the corner. It is a masterclass in performative wealth. It is also completely fraudulent. Looking around the room, my mind instantly calculates the cost. The imported champagne, the custom ice sculptures, the rented throne chair where my sister is currently holding court. I know exactly where the money came from. Every single cent paying for this lavish spectacle was routed through the offshore Delaware shell company that Preston and Jamal operate. They are drinking my stolen marital savings and digesting the skimmed retirement funds of elderly community members. I step fully into the ballroom. The heavy wooden doors shut behind me with a solid thud. The effect is instantaneous. A woman near the entrance notices me first, her jaw dropping. The whisper spreads like a shockwave through the crowd of Chloe's elite sorority sisters and my mother's high society church friends. The bright, bubbly chatter of 70 women dies down to a suffocating, dead silence. The string quartet hits a sour note and slowly stops playing. Chloe sits on her massive rattan throne at the front of the room, surrounded by a mountain of expensive gifts. Her smug, radiant smile completely vanishes when she locks eyes with me. Before she can even formulate an insult, my mother Beatrice spots me from the dessert table. Her face contorts with absolute panic and rage. She drops a silver serving tongs and marches across the polished hardwood floor, her heels striking the ground like weapons. "What on earth are you doing here?" Beatrice hisses, blocking my path to the center of the room. She looks me up and down, clearly infuriated that I look healthy, wealthy, and entirely unbothered. "You were explicitly excluded from this guest list, Kiara." I simply smile, adjusting the pristine silver-wrapped gift box in my hands. "I came to deliver a present to my sister." I reply, my voice perfectly level and loud enough for the closest tables to hear. "Family is so important during these milestone moments, right, Mom?" Beatrice frantically waves her hand toward the back of the room, signaling the country club security guards stationed by the exit. "Please remove her," Beatrice announces, intentionally raising her voice so her affluent friends can hear her play the victim. "My daughter is a disturbed sick woman. The cancer treatments and her impending divorce have completely compromised her mental state. She is unstable and trying to ruin a beautiful day for her pregnant sister. Please escort her out immediately." Two large security guards in dark suits approach me, their expressions cautious. I do not flinch. I do not back away. I stand my ground and look directly at the head of security. I am a blood relative dropping off a single gift. I say, maintaining absolute freezing eye contact. "I will hand this box to my sister and walk myself out. If you put a hand on me before I do, my attorney will own this country club by Monday morning." The guards hesitate, glancing at my expensive attire and my total lack of erratic behavior. They step back, giving me a wide berth. Beatrice turns a furious shade of red, stepping into my personal space. "You could never give Jamal a child, so you want to ruin your sister and her special day out of pure bitter jealousy." She sneers, her voice dripping with venom. I look down at my mother, feeling the last shred of my biological obligation evaporate. "Chloe's day is currently funded by my stolen joint savings account, Beatrice." I reply softly, making sure only she can hear the exact threat. "The least I can do is deliver my gift before the federal government seizes the floral arrangements." Beatrice pales, stepping aside as if I had physically burned her. The path to the throne is clear. I glide past the tables of gaping guests. The silence in the room is so absolute I can hear the rustle of my own silk gown. Chloe watches me approach, her hands resting defensively over her baby bump. She tries to summon her usual arrogance, leaning back in her rented throne. "You actually showed up!" Chloe sneers, ensuring her sorority sisters forming a protective semicircle around her can hear. "Did Jamal finally cut off your credit cards, Kiara? Are you here to beg for a handout because you cannot afford your own medical bills?" I stop right in front of her. The audience is captivated, holding their breath. Dozens of women subtly raise their smartphones, ready to record the inevitable drama. I could not be happier that they are filming. I want this documented from every possible angle. "I am not here to beg, Chloe," I say, my voice projecting clearly across the silent ballroom. I am here to contribute to your perfect life with Preston. I brought you something very special for the nursery. Open it. I hold out the sleek silver box, wrapped in a flawless white silk ribbon. Chloe eyes it suspiciously, but her vanity overrides her caution. She loves an audience, and she cannot resist the opportunity to open a gift and mock whatever is inside. She snatches the box from my hands, placing it on her lap. Her friends lean in close, their phone cameras recording her every move. Let us see what kind of cheap trash you dragged in here. Chloe mocks, pulling the silk ribbon loose. She lifts the silver lid with a dramatic flair, expecting to pull out a generic blanket or a low-budget baby toy she can publicly ridicule. She reaches inside the box. Her fingers grasp the contents. She pulls them out. Her arrogant smile freezes instantly. The blood completely drains from her face, leaving her looking hollow and terrified. Her hands begin to tremble so violently that the heavy glossy paper shakes in her grip. Inside the box is not a baby outfit. It is a meticulously compiled high-resolution dossier. It is a stack of time-stamped photographs and highlighted financial statements that I pulled directly from Preston and his hidden offshore accounts. The top photograph is a crystal-clear image of a 22-year-old blonde paralegal draped across Preston on a chartered yacht in Miami, taken exactly when Preston claimed he was away on a grueling corporate litigation retreat. Underneath the photo are the receipts. I included the signed lease agreement for a luxury downtown penthouse apartment rented entirely in the paralegal's name. I included the bank wire transfer confirmations showing Preston routing thousands of dollars from the fraudulent Shell, LLC, straight into the paralegal's private checking account. I even included the digital receipt for the massive diamond tennis necklace Chloe is currently wearing around her neck, showing it was purchased using the exact same stolen funds. Chloe stares at the evidence of her husband's double life, her breathing turning into shallow, panicked gasps. The illusion of her flawless, wealthy marriage shatters in an instant. She tries to shove the papers back into the box, but her hands are shaking too badly. The glossy photographs and the highlighted bank statements slip from her trembling fingers. They spill over the edge of her lap, scattering across the polished hardwood floor, right at the feet of her elite sorority network and high society friends. Gasps erupt from the women standing in the front row as they look down and see the undeniable proof of Preston's infidelity and financial crimes laid bare on the ballroom floor. The phones that were recording her unboxing are now capturing the absolute destruction of her social standing. I look down at my sister, feeling zero sympathy for a woman who happily funded her life with money stolen from a cancer patient. I hope the baby likes the yacht photos, I say, my voice ringing with cold absolute justice. Tell Preston his offshore accounting is almost as sloppy as his infidelity. I turn my back on her sobbing form in the erupting chaos of the ballroom. I walk out of the country club with my head held high, leaving them to drown in the mess they created. The baby shower fallout hits faster than I anticipated. Preston is a man whose entire existence is propped up by unearned confidence and white privilege. Stripping him of that illusion in front of his wife and her elite social circle does not just embarrass him. It triggers a desperate, vicious retaliation. Less than 48 hours after I dropped the photographs of his 22-year-old mistress onto the country club floor, my phone rings. It is Diane, my divorce attorney. Her voice holds a dangerous, razor-sharp edge. She tells me Preston has just filed an ex parte emergency injunction. He is not just fighting the divorce, he is attempting to weaponize my breast cancer diagnosis to have me declared legally incompetent. Preston, acting as Jamal's lead counsel, submitted a petition for an involuntary psychiatric hold. The legal filing claims that my post-surgical medications and the trauma of my illness have induced severe paranoia and psychotic delusions. He argues that my freezing of the marital assets and my behavior at the baby shower are clear indicators of a mental break. The ultimate goal of this motion is sickeningly transparent. He is asking the judge to grant Jamal immediate, uncontested conservatorship over my medical decisions and my physical assets. They want to forcibly remove me from my own home, hand the deed over to my husband, and drain my bank accounts to cover the offshore embezzlement tracks before I can expose them. They are trying to lock me in a psychiatric ward so they can steal my money in peace. I do not panic. I do not cry. Panic is an emotion reserved for people who do not know how to read a balance sheet. I am sitting in the sleek glass-enclosed executive suite of Malik's corporate headquarters. The city skyline stretches out beneath us, a vast grid of power and money. Malik is standing near the floor-to-ceiling window, listening as I relay Diane's update. His jaw tightens, and the quiet intensity in his dark eyes flares into absolute fury. He understands exactly what kind of systemic violence Preston is trying to inflict. Historically, labeling an assertive, financially independent black woman as mentally unstable is the oldest trick in the playbook. Preston thinks he can use the legal system to silence me. Malik walks over to the expansive slate conference table and sits directly beside me. His proximity is a grounding force, a silent promise that I am not fighting this war alone. We set up my laptop for the emergency virtual hearing. Diane has already filed our counter motions, but we are keeping our primary weapon completely concealed until the exact right moment. The Zoom application launches, connecting us to the digital courtroom of Judge Eris Thorne, a no-nonsense magistrate known for her zero-tolerance policy regarding courtroom theatrics. The screen populates with video squares. Jamal sits in a generic office conference room, wearing a modest, subdued sweater to play the role of the exhausted, heartbroken husband. Preston sits beside him, wearing his most expensive power suit, his face arranged in a mask of deep, manufactured sympathy. When they see my video feed, Activate Preston's eyes narrow. He expected me to log in from a hospital bed looking frail and defeated. Instead, I am sitting in a multi-million-dollar executive suite wearing a tailored ivory blazer, my posture immaculate with the billionaire founder of their own firm sitting just out of frame supporting me. Judge Thorne calls the emergency hearing to order. She looks directly at Preston and demands he justify this highly unusual ex parte motion. Preston leans into the camera, his voice dripping with fake paternalistic concern. He tells the judge that this is a tragic situation involving a deeply disturbed woman. He claims my cancer diagnosis has completely shattered my grasp on reality. He weaves a fabricated story about how I have been making wild, unfounded accusations against my family, behaving erratically in public spaces, and unlawfully hoarding marital assets out of pure, medicated paranoia. Jamal chimes in right on cue. He looks down at his hands, forcing his voice to break. He tells the judge he just wants to get his sick wife the psychiatric help she desperately needs, but he cannot pay for her medical care because I have irrationally frozen all his bank accounts. He practically begs the court to grant him control of the house and the finances so he can save me from my own deteriorating mind. Then Preston plays his supposed trump card. He shares his screen and submits an exhibit to the court. It is a multi-page psychiatric evaluation signed by a Dr. William Vance, a private physician I have never met in my entire life. The document is a masterpiece of medical fiction. It outlines a fake consultation citing my aggressive behavior as a symptom of a medication-induced psychotic break. Preston argues that this medical professional highly recommends an immediate involuntary hold and the transfer of my financial autonomy to my husband. I stare at the fraudulent document on my monitor. My heart rate does not elevate. My breathing remains perfectly even. I am looking at a man committing a verifiable felony in a federal proceeding. Preston is so blinded by his desire to punish me for exposing his affair that he has crossed the line from unethical legal maneuvering straight into criminal forgery. Judge Thorne reviews the submitted evaluation. Her expression is grave, her brow furrowed with concern. She turns her attention to my video feed, asking Diane how we respond to this alarming medical assessment. Diane does not miss a single beat. She unmutes her microphone, her voice slicing through the digital courtroom with lethal precision. She addresses the judge respectfully, but the underlying threat in her tone is palpable. Diane states that we categorically deny every single allegation presented by opposing counsel. She then asks the court for permission to submit our own medical exhibit for immediate review. Judge Thorne grants the request. Diane uploads a document directly into the court system. It is not a questionable evaluation from a random private clinic. It is a comprehensive sworn and notarized affidavit from Dr. Sarah Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins is the chief of oncology at the premier cancer research institute in the state, and she is my primary attending physician. The affidavit includes a complete time-stamped neurological and cognitive evaluation conducted less than 48 hours ago. The medical report explicitly states that my cognitive function is entirely flawless. My treatment plan involves 0 psychotropic medications, and I am in perfect mental health. Dr. Jenkins even included a strongly worded addendum stating that any claim of my mental instability is not only medically unfounded, but factually absurd. Preston's smug expression begins to falter. The color slowly drains from his cheeks as he reads the indisputable medical evidence signed by one of the most respected oncologists in the country. He tries to interrupt, stammering that his submitted evaluation should still be considered valid, but Diane completely cuts him off. She is just getting started. Diane informs the judge that my forensic accounting firm ran a preliminary background check on the physician who supposedly signed Preston's exhibit. Dr. William Vance lost his medical license 3 years ago for prescription fraud. Furthermore, the signature on the document Preston just submitted to the court does not match any of Vance's public records. The digital courtroom plunges into a heavy, suffocating silence. Jamal looks at Preston with wide, terrified eyes, suddenly realizing his brother-in-law has dragged him into a perjury trap. Malik, sitting just off-screen, lets out a low, satisfied breath. Diane delivers the final crushing blow. She formally submits a motion to strike Preston's evidence and immediately files a motion for severe judicial sanctions. She requests that the court initiate a full independent forensic audit of Preston and his submitted documents, citing clear and compelling evidence of forgery, perjury, and the submission of fraudulent medical records in a deliberate attempt to manipulate the court. Judge Thorne stops looking at the documents and looks directly at Preston. Her eyes are dark, furious, and completely unforgiving. She demands to know exactly where Preston obtained the evaluation. Preston opens his mouth, but no words come out. He is physically trembling. His arrogance has completely evaporated, replaced by the sheer paralyzing terror of a man who knows his entire career is about to be dismantled. The judge issues her ruling with a swift, merciless strike of her gavel. She denies the psychiatric hold. She denies the transfer of assets. She completely upholds my emergency financial freeze on Jamal, but she does not stop there. Judge Thorne officially grants Diane's motion for sanctions. She orders Preston to surrender all original copies of his submitted evidence to the court clerk by the end of the business day for a formal fraud investigation. She explicitly states that she will be forwarding the transcript of this hearing directly to the State Bar Association for disciplinary review. Preston looks like he might vomit. Jamal is staring at the camera in absolute horror, his fake sympathy entirely stripped away, leaving only the panicked realization that his safety net is gone. I look directly into my webcam, making sure my eyes burn through the screen, and lock onto my husband. I do not say a single word. I do not have to. My silence is a promise that I'm just getting started. The Zoom call disconnects and the trap closes a little tighter around their throats. The digital courtroom window closes and the screen goes completely black. The silence in Malik's executive suite is absolute. We do not celebrate or cheer because the job is only half finished. Preston has just been stripped of his arrogant armor and handed over to a judicial fraud investigation, but Jamal is still sitting in that generic conference room. My soon-to-be ex-husband just watched his invincible white brother-in-law get completely dismantled by a furious judge. Jamal knows he is next. The corporate compliance audit is already breathing down his neck, and my forensic discovery motion has locked his legitimate domestic accounts in a vice grip. He is a man accustomed to luxury and control, now staring directly at the terrifying reality of poverty and prison. A cornered animal is incredibly dangerous, but a cornered narcissist is incredibly predictable. Malik walks over to the expansive glass window overlooking the city skyline. He slides his hands into the pockets of his tailored trousers and turns back to face me. The dark intensity in his eyes matches the steady rhythm of my own racing pulse. We do not need to speak to communicate our next move. I shift my chair closer to the center of the massive slate conference table and wake my laptop from its brief sleep mode. I open the encrypted backdoor portal that links directly to the internal servers of Apex Financial. I know exactly how Jamal operates under extreme pressure. He is a coward who relies on the illusion of wealth to maintain his social status. Right now, he is suffocating. He cannot access his checking accounts to pay for his expensive lifestyle or his mistress. He knows Preston is compromised and will likely throw him under the bus to save his own legal career. Jamal needs an exit strategy, and he needs liquid capital to fund his escape before the federal authorities start seizing assets. I launch the live monitoring software we installed on his specific employee workstation. The screen divides into two distinct panels. On the left, I pull up the active network directory tracking every user currently logged into the firm mainframe. On the right, I mirror the exact display of Jamal's desktop monitor. The red recording indicator pulses steadily in the corner of my screen, capturing every digital footprint he is about to leave behind. For 10 agonizing minutes, the screen remains entirely static. I take a slow sip of the bottled water sitting on the table, keeping my eyes locked on the monitor. Malik steps up right behind my chair. I can feel the warmth of his presence grounding me against the electric anticipation building in the room. Then the static screen blinks to life. Jamal logs into the secure corporate portal. He types his unique employee identification number and password. His hands must be shaking because he miskeys the password on his first attempt. He tries again, and the system grants him access. I watch his cursor dart frantically across the screen. He is not checking client portfolios or reviewing market trends. He goes straight to his own personal banking dashboard linked through the company. He hits refresh 3 times in rapid succession. The glaring red banner remains plastered across the top of his screen, notifying him that his assets are frozen pending domestic litigation. He has 0 available funds. The reality of his situation is finally setting in. His cursor moves away from the personal banking tab and opens the master registry of his assigned corporate portfolios. This is the exact moment of truth. Malik and I designed a highly specific digital honeypot. We planted a dummy portfolio deep inside the firm backend and routed it directly to his desk. We coded it to look like a high-net-worth client died intestate, leaving a massive liquid trust sitting in corporate purgatory. We stripped away all active managers and removed the daily oversight alerts. We made it look like $2.5 million in raw, untraceable capital, just begging to be moved by someone smart enough to exploit the administrative oversight. I watch the white arrow of his mouse hover over the general registry list. He scrolls down past the standard mutual funds and the managed retirement accounts. He stops. The cursor rests directly on the dummy portfolio. He clicks to open the file. The fake ledger populates on his screen, showing the massive, unassigned cash balance. I can practically hear his rapid breathing through the monitor. He clicks into the administrative history of the account, checking to see when it was last audited. He sees exactly what we wanted him to see. Nothing. It looks completely abandoned. It looks like the universe just handed him the ultimate lottery ticket, right when he needed a miracle to escape his crumbling marriage and the impending compliance investigation. Malik places his hand firmly on the back of my chair. We watch the screen with bated breath. Greed is a powerful motivator, but fear is the ultimate catalyst. Jamal knows he is running out of time. He clicks the transfer tab at the top of the interface. He is going to take the bait. The wire transfer protocol window opens on his desktop. The system prompts him to enter the destination routing details. Jamal pulls up a hidden encrypted text file on his computer and copies a long string of alphanumeric codes. He pastes the routing information into the transfer window. I quickly cross-reference the destination numbers against my own forensic database. He is routing the money to the offshore Delaware shell company. It is the exact same fraudulent entity registered under Preston's name that they have been using to launder the skimmed retirement funds. I smile coldly at the screen. It is a brilliant, albeit desperate move on his part. Jamal cannot wire the money to his own personal accounts because of my legal freeze. If he sends it to a brand new, unknown account, the corporate security algorithms might flag the transaction and halt the transfer. But the Delaware Shell Company is already established in the system as an approved external vendor for consulting fees. It is the only laundering pipeline he has fully operational that will bypass the immediate internal red flags. He plans to pull a double cross. He figures he will wire the $2.5 million to Preston's LLC, then immediately drain that entity into an untraceable cryptocurrency wallet before Preston even realizes what is happening. Jamal is willing to steal millions from his employer and simultaneously rob his own partner in crime just to save his own skin. He types the total amount into the transfer box, $2,500,000. He does not even leave a fraction of a cent behind. He is taking the entire bait. The system prompts him for a final authorization check. He must manually enter his secondary trading credentials to verify the movement of funds exceeding $1 million. This is the point of no return. Up until this exact second, everything he has done could theoretically be dismissed as unauthorized browsing or a simple administrative error. But entering those specific security tokens transforms the action from casual browsing into an intentional, deliberate financial crime. The cursor blinks steadily in the authorization box. He hesitates. The seconds stretch out, feeling like hours in the quiet penthouse suite. Jamal is sitting in that conference room weighing his options. He can stay and face the wrath of my divorce attorney, the scrutiny of the internal compliance board, and the inevitable collapse of his fake wealthy lifestyle. Or he can take the money and run. He types the first number of his security PIN. I lean closer to the monitor. My eyes track every single keystroke. He types the second number, then the third. He enters the entire 6-digit code sequence linking his personal identity directly to the fraudulent transaction. He moves the mouse down to the bottom right corner of the screen. The cursor rests squarely on the confirmation button. He clicks confirm. The screen instantly flashes a bright, vivid green. A digital receipt generates showing the successful initiation of the wire transfer. The funds are officially in transit, moving across state lines and routing through the federal banking system straight into the offshore shell company. I hit the save button on the recording software, capturing the entire sequence of events in pristine high-definition video. The digital file is instantly locked, encrypted, and backed up to multiple secure cloud servers. The trap snaps entirely shut. Jamal thinks he just secured his financial freedom and outsmarted everyone. He thinks he just won the game. He does not realize that he just committed federal wire fraud across state lines using a corporate banking system. He does not realize that the penalty for this specific violation of federal law carries a mandatory minimum sentence that will strip away the best years of his life. He and Preston are now inextricably linked to a multi-million-dollar federal crime with an ironclad digital paper trail leading right to their front doors. Less than 24 hours after Jamal commits federal wire fraud, he decides to secure his social standing. The digital trap has already snapped shut around his ankles, but he is completely oblivious to the danger. He genuinely believes he just successfully smuggled $2.5 million into an offshore shell company. He thinks his only remaining obstacle is winning the public relations war against his soon-to-be ex-wife. He knows our divorce is going to be incredibly messy, and he needs to preemptively control the narrative. I am sitting in the quiet sanctuary of Malik and his executive office when my phone begins to vibrate with a sudden, relentless intensity. The notifications do not stop. They pour in from casual acquaintances, former college classmates, and clients. I unlock the screen and open my social media feed. The entire timeline is dominated by a single, highly produced video. Jamal has posted a 5-minute confessional clip to all of his social media platforms. The production value is sickeningly calculated. He is sitting in a dimly lit room wearing a modest, neutral-colored sweater that makes him look entirely approachable and deeply exhausted. He has positioned a ring light perfectly to catch the manufactured tears pooling in his eyes. He looks directly into the camera lens and weaponizes his carefully crafted image as an upstanding, successful black man who is simply trying to survive a nightmare. He tells the camera with a trembling voice that he recently had to make the most difficult decision of his life. He claims he had to flee his own home to escape a profoundly abusive environment. He does not stop there. He takes a deep breath, wipes away a fake tear, and tells his audience that his wife is using her recent breast cancer diagnosis as a weapon to extort him financially. He actually looks into the lens and says that I am faking the severity of my illness. He claims the lumpectomy was a minor elective procedure that I am blowing out of proportion to garner sympathy and drain his hard-earned savings out of pure, unadulterated spite. He paints a picture of me as a greedy, unstable woman holding his compassion hostage. He calls himself a survivor of domestic financial abuse. The video spreads like wildfire through our affluent Atlanta social circles. Jamal knows exactly how to play the crowd. He uses all the right therapeutic buzzwords to make himself sound enlightened and victimized. But the real knife twist, the ultimate betrayal, does not come from my husband. It comes an hour later from my own blood. My mother Beatrice shares the video directly to her own timeline. She does not just hit the share button. She writes a long, sanctimonious paragraph dripping with performative Christianity. She asks her extensive church network and her sorority sisters to pray for my troubled soul. She explicitly tells her hundreds of followers that she loves her daughter, but that I have been a pathological liar since childhood. To give her vicious narrative weight, Beatrice types out a fabricated story for the entire internet to read. She claims that when I was 12 years old, I lied about having a broken wrist just to steal attention away from my sister Chloe and her cheerleading championship. The reality of that childhood memory flashes hot and sharp in my mind. I remember exactly what happened that weekend. Chloe had pushed me down a flight of hardwood stairs in a fit of jealous rage because my father had praised my report card. My wrist was fractured in 2 places. Beatrice dragged me to the emergency room and gripped my good arm so hard her fingernails left bruises. She forced me to look the triage doctor in the eye and say I tripped over my own feet because she could not risk Chloe getting suspended from the cheer squad before the regional finals. Beatrice has always rewritten history to protect her golden child and her own social standing. Now she is publicly weaponizing that trauma to protect her wealthy son-in-law. She publicly brands me as deeply disturbed, financially greedy, and fundamentally dishonest. The professional and social fallout is incredibly swift. In the Black professional community, reputation is absolute currency. My phone stops ringing with supportive check-ins and starts ringing with cancellation notices. 2 high-profile corporate clients email my forensic auditing firm within the hour. They request to pause our consulting contracts indefinitely, pending the resolution of my personal matters. They use polite, careful corporate speak, but the underlying message is crystal clear. Nobody wants an allegedly unstable, vindictive, and dishonest auditor handling their sensitive financial data. The ladies at the country club start whispering. My name is dragged violently through the mud in the comment sections of local community groups. People I have known for a decade are leaving sympathetic heart emojis on Jamal and his page praising him for his strength and bravery in walking away from a toxic marriage. Jamal thinks he has successfully cornered me. He believes that by destroying my public image, I will be too embarrassed, isolated, and professionally ruined to pursue the divorce aggressively. He thinks the crushing weight of social pressure will force me to drop my discovery motions and agree to a quiet, cheap settlement just to make the public humiliation stop. Malik is standing on the other side of the Slate conference table, watching the social media metrics climb on a secondary monitor. The dark intensity in his eyes shifts into something dangerous. His jaw is clenched so tightly, a muscle pulses visibly in his cheek. As a man who built a billionaire empire, he understands the sheer destructive power of a coordinated smear campaign. He hates seeing my name dragged through the digital gutter by cowards. He turns to me, his voice a low protective rumble that fills the executive suite. He offers to deploy the massive elite public relations firm retained by Apex Financial. He tells me his crisis management team can release a coordinated counterstatement within the hour. He promises to back it with aggressive cease and desist letters from his top-tier corporate lawyers that will completely annihilate Jamal and his credibility. Malik is ready to unleash absolute hell on the internet to protect my honor and shut my family down. I look at the glowing monitor displaying Jamal and his fake tears. I read the treacherous comments left by my own mother. A year ago, the injustice of this public character assassination would have broken me. I would have drafted a frantic emotional response trying to prove my innocence to a crowd of strangers committed to misunderstanding me. I do not feel the urge to defend myself anymore. I reach for the porcelain mug resting on the smooth slate table. I bring it to my lips and take a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee. The dark roast is bitter and perfectly hot. It grounds me in the present moment. I look up at Malik, meeting his fierce, protective gaze, and I gently shake my head. I tell him to call off the public relations team. Let them talk on the internet. I say, my voice perfectly calm and devoid of any panic. I set the porcelain mug down on the table with a sharp, definitive click that echoes in the quiet room. I am going to let the federal government do my talking. I pull my laptop closer to me, adjusting the screen to face forward. I do not care about winning a fleeting argument in the comment section of a social media platform. I care about absolute permanent destruction. I open the master file folder resting on my desktop. Inside is the complete compiled digital vault. It contains the high-definition screen recordings of Jamal initiating the wire fraud. It contains the forged medical documents Preston submitted to the family court judge. It holds the offshore routing numbers for the Delaware Shell Company and the detailed encrypted ledgers proving they skimmed millions from the retirement funds of elderly clients. I open a secure, heavily encrypted browser portal connected directly to the Cybercrime Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Enforcement Division of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I do not draft a lengthy emotional explanation. I simply attach the master evidence file. I categorize the submission under immediate corporate wire fraud and financial embezzlement. Jamal and Beatrice want to build a narrative based on illusions and fake tears. I am building a cage made of undeniable forensic data. I move my cursor over the submit button. I take one last look at the social media feed where my husband is soaking up the sympathy of the masses. Then I press the trackpad. The encrypted payload leaves my computer routing straight to the federal authorities. The internet can have the rumors. The feds are getting the receipts. The Neutral Law Office sits on the 42nd floor of a steel and glass high-rise in downtown Atlanta. The room is designed to be intentionally intimidating. It features cold gray walls, a massive mahogany table dominating the center and floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a dizzying view of the city traffic far below. I walk in wearing a tailored ivory suit. My posture is immaculate. My chest still aches slightly from the surgical incisions, but I do not let a single ounce of physical discomfort show on my face. Diane walks beside me carrying nothing but a slim, unmarked leather portfolio. We take our seats on one side of the vast table. The court reporter sets up her stenography machine in the corner, her fingers resting lightly on the keys, ready to capture every single word that will soon destroy my husband and his arrogant brother-in-law. The heavy glass doors swing open. Jamal and Preston walk in, acting as if they own the entire building. Jamal is wearing a custom navy suit that costs more than my first car. He flashes a brilliant, entirely fake smile at the court reporter before taking his seat across from me. Preston drops a massive stack of legal binders onto the table with a loud, aggressive thud. It is a classic intimidation tactic. He wants me to look at those heavy binders and feel entirely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of his fabricated evidence. I do not even blink. I just look at the empty space in front of Diane. Preston clears his throat and formally begins the deposition. He speaks to the court reporter, but his smug eyes are locked directly on my face. He starts the interrogation with a barrage of rapid-fire questions designed to confuse and exhaust me. He demands to know the exact origin of the funds I used to retain my legal counsel. He aggressively questions my medical expenses, insinuating that my breast cancer treatment is a financial burden I am unfairly trying to shift onto his client to punish him for the divorce. Then Preston leans forward, resting his elbows on the polished mahogany. He brings up my personal savings. He asks me to state for the record why I allegedly hid my assets from my husband during our marriage. He smiles a cruel, familiar smile. He reminds the room of a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, where my own mother Beatrice told the entire extended family that I was financially naive and incapable of managing a household budget. Preston tries to use my family and their toxic history as legal leverage. He wants the court reporter to type out the assertion that I am too unstable and ignorant to understand basic wealth management. He paints a picture of Jamal as the patient, financially savvy husband who was forced to take total control of our accounts just to save me from my own incompetence. He leans back and states that I never understood how real wealth works. I do not react to this bait. I answer every single question with cold, clinical precision. I state my exact income. I outline my independent savings. I provide dates, times, and transaction histories with flawless photographic recall. Preston grows increasingly frustrated by my total lack of emotional response. He wants me to cry. He wants me to act like the erratic, medicated woman he described in his fraudulent psychiatric hold motion earlier this week. Instead, I sit there like a titanium vault. After 2 hours of Preston aggressively pacing the room and throwing baseless accusations, he finally runs out of steam. He sits down, adjusting his expensive tie, looking immensely satisfied with his performance. He genuinely believes he just secured a massive legal victory. He looks over at Diane and asks if opposing counsel has any follow-up questions before they conclude the session and move to finalize the asset division. Diane does not stand up. She does not pace around the room or raise her voice. She simply opens her slim leather portfolio. The shift in the room is instantaneous and absolute. The air seems to drop 10 degrees. Diane looks directly at Jamal. She asks him to state for the record the exact balance of his personal domestic checking accounts. Jamal smirks and confidently states that his accounts are currently frozen due to my malicious and unfounded discovery motion. Diane nods slowly. She asks him to state under oath if he has transferred, wired, or otherwise moved any marital assets or corporate funds into any external or offshore accounts within the past 48 hours. Jamal does not even hesitate. He looks right at me, his eyes filled with absolute contempt, and answers no. He says he has not moved a single dime. He commits perjury right on the official federal record without blinking an eye. Diane smiles. It is a terrifying, predatory smile. She reaches into her portfolio and pulls out a single piece of high-gloss paper. She places it face down on the mahogany table and slides it slowly across the smooth surface. The paper comes to a stop exactly halfway between Jamal and Preston. I suggest you review the document before we continue, Diane says, her voice slicing through the silent room like a scalpel. Preston rolls his eyes, acting as if this is just a desperate last-minute delay tactic. He picks up the paper and flips it over. Jamal leans in to look at it. I watch the exact moment their entire reality shatters. It takes roughly 3 seconds for Preston to process the forensic data printed on the page. All the color instantly drains from his face, leaving his skin a sickly ashen gray. His jaw goes completely slack. He drops the paper onto the table as if it just physically burned his fingers. It is the high-definition wire transfer receipt. It shows the exact routing numbers, the timestamp, and the specific security authorization codes Jamal used yesterday afternoon. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jamal transferred $2,500,000 from an Apex Financial Holding account directly into the Delaware Shell Limited Liability Company, registered under Preston and his own name. It is undeniable, irrefutable proof of federal wire fraud and massive corporate embezzlement. Jamal stares at the paper. A thick bead of sweat instantly forms at his temple. His breathing becomes shallow and erratic. He looks frantically at Preston for help. His eyes are wide with sheer, unadulterated panic. Preston is staring at the receipt, his mouth opening and closing without producing a single sound. The massive stack of intimidating legal binders sitting next to him is entirely useless against documented federal bank fraud. What is this? Jamal stammers, his voice cracking completely. His arrogant facade collapses into a pathetic, trembling mess. Preston, what is she showing me? Tell her this is fake. Tell her she cannot use this. Preston finally finds his voice, though it is high-pitched and shaking violently. He slams his hand down on the table and points a trembling finger at Diane. You cannot use this document, he shouts desperately. I am his legal counsel. We claim attorney-client privilege. You acquired this information illegally. You have no jurisdiction to present corporate financial records in a domestic dispute. I demand this exhibit be stricken from the record immediately. Diane does not blink. She does not break her cold, calculating gaze. She leans forward, resting her hands perfectly flat on the mahogany table. You cannot claim attorney-client privilege on a federal crime you co-signed, Preston. Diane says, her voice ringing with absolute lethal authority. You set up the offshore shell company. You provided the routing numbers. You are an active co-conspirator in a multi-million-dollar embezzlement ring operating across state lines. Preston falls back into his leather chair as if he has been physically struck. He shakes his head, trying to formulate a defense, but his legal mind is completely short-circuiting. He knows exactly what the mandatory minimum sentence is for wire fraud. He knows his career, his wealth, and his freedom have just evaporated in the span of 60 seconds. Diane turns her attention back to Jamal, who is currently hyperventilating in his seat. And by the way, Jamal, Diane continues, her tone dropping to a deadly whisper. My client is not just your opposing party in this divorce. She is not just the wife you tried to discard 15 minutes before cancer surgery. I sit forward, perfectly mirroring Diane in her posture. I look directly into my husband and his terrified eyes. She is the lead forensic auditor contracted by the Securities and Exchange Commission for the current federal investigation into your firm. Diane finishes delivering the final fatal blow. The room goes dead silent save for the rapid mechanical clicking of the court reporter typing every single devastating word into the official legal record. Jamal looks at me, his chest heaving, his entire world crashing down around him. He finally realizes the magnitude of his fatal error. He thought he was outsmarting a sick, vulnerable woman. He never realized he was sitting across the table from his own executioner. The annual Apex Financial Charity Gala is the undisputed crown jewel of the Atlanta social season. It is a glittering, high-stakes exhibition where the corporate elite, politicians, and generational wealth gather under one roof to write massive tax-deductible checks and network over imported champagne. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel is completely transformed into a fortress of luxury, featuring crystal chandeliers, cascading floral installations, and a towering ice sculpture that dominates the center of the room. It is the perfect stage for a group of desperate criminals trying to pretend they are not standing on the edge of a federal indictment. Jamal arrives exactly 45 minutes late because he believes punctuality is for subordinates. He struts through the main entrance, acting as if he personally owns the entire building. He is wearing a custom-tailored midnight blue velvet dinner jacket and a smile so aggressively bright it looks painted onto his face. Clinging to his arm is a 24-year-old social media influencer who is busy recording the room on her phone, completely oblivious to the fact that her new wealthy boyfriend is a ticking legal time bomb. Jamal is playing the role of the newly liberated king of the city. He laughs loudly at jokes, slapping senior partners on the back and ordering premium bottles of liquor to his table. It is a spectacular display of narcissistic denial. He knows I have the wire transfer receipt. He knows I handed it to him in the deposition. But his ego has convinced him that if he just projects enough dominance tonight, the firm will view him as indispensable and protect him from the fallout. He thinks the $2.5 million he diverted into the shell company makes him untouchable. Across the expansive ballroom, Preston and my sister Chloe are putting on a masterclass in toxic self-preservation. They are positioned perfectly in front of the branded step and repeat media wall posing for the event photographers. Preston looks physically ill. His complexion is a sallow grayish tone, and he is sweating through the collar of his designer tuxedo. His eyes keep darting nervously toward the exit. He knows his legal career is effectively over, and that the state bar is currently reviewing his fraudulent judicial filings. He is a man waiting for the executioner to arrive. Chloe, however, refuses to let reality interfere with her social standing. She is gripping his arm like a vice, her fingernails likely digging directly into his skin through the fabric of his jacket. She is wearing a heavily sequined maternity gown, forcing a radiant, serene smile for the flashing cameras. She knows exactly who her husband has been sleeping with. She has seen the high-resolution photographs of his 22-year-old mistress and the bank statements proving he bought that girl a luxury apartment using stolen money. But Chloe would rather maintain the public illusion of a flawless, affluent marriage than face the humiliation of a public scandal. She glares across the room at Jamal and his new young girlfriend, her expression dripping with bitter judgment, before immediately pivoting back to the cameras with a perfect rehearsed laugh. The entire foundation of their marriage is currently held together by nothing but greed and absolute denial. Stationed near the exclusive VIP lounge, my mother Beatrice is holding court just as I expected. She is in her element, completely surrounded by the most influential women from her megachurch board and her alumni sorority chapter. She is wearing a heavy sapphire silk gown that was undoubtedly purchased using the cash Jamal skimmed from my joint savings account. I do not need to be standing next to her to know exactly what she is saying. Her body language broadcasts her lies across the room. Beatrice places a delicate hand over her heart, leaning in close to whisper to the pastor wife. She is playing the role of the tragic but resilient matriarch. She is telling her wealthy friends how generous Jamal has been to the family during this incredibly difficult season. She shakes her head, looking deeply sorrowful, as she spreads the carefully crafted narrative about my mental decline. She claims that the cancer treatments completely compromised my sanity and that I became dangerously unstable. She tells these influential women that she prays for my soul every single night, but that I simply refuse to be a supportive wife, forcing Jamal to walk away for his own safety. She is actively using my medical trauma and my impending divorce as social currency to garner sympathy and elevate her own status in the room. She is selling me out for country club clout. They are all dancing on a financial grave they dug themselves. They think they have successfully discarded me. They think I am sitting in a dark hotel room crying over my medical bills and mourning the loss of a husband who replaced me with a woman 10 years my junior. They have no idea that the ground beneath their feet is already gone. Outside the ballroom, in the quiet, hushed elegance of the grand foyer, I stand facing a massive gilded mirror. The woman looking back at me is entirely unrecognizable from the exhausted, terrified patient sitting in that freezing pre-op room just a month ago. I am wearing a custom-tailored emerald green silk gown that drapes flawlessly over my curves. The deep jewel tone is a highly deliberate choice. It represents the color of money, the color of absolute control, and the color of vibrant living health. Yesterday afternoon, my primary oncologist called me with the final post-surgical laboratory results. The margins are completely clear. The lymph nodes show zero signs of spread. I do not require radiation or aggressive chemotherapy. I am officially and unequivocally cancer-free. The physical relief is staggering, but the mental clarity is my true weapon. I take a slow, deep breath, feeling my lungs expand without the crushing weight of fear. I am not a victim. I am a lead forensic auditor who just successfully tracked the largest corporate embezzlement ring in the history of this city. Malik steps up behind me, his reflection joining mine in the gilded mirror. He is wearing a classic black tuxedo that highlights his broad shoulders and commanding presence. He radiates a quiet, lethal authority that requires absolutely no loud laughter or flashy accessories to make an impact. He is the billionaire founder and silent majority shareholder of the exact company hosting this gala. He is the man who signs the paychecks for every single executive currently drinking champagne inside that ballroom, including Jamal. "You look absolutely breathtaking, Kiara," Malik says, his deep voice warm and steady. He steps closer, resting his hand gently against the curve of my lower back. The touch sends a sudden, sharp thrill of electricity straight through my system. "Are you ready to show them exactly how real wealth works?" I ask, meeting his dark, intense eyes in the mirror. Malik smiles, a slow, dangerous expression that promises absolute ruin for the men inside. "I have been waiting for this moment since the day you ripped up that contract in the hospital," he replies. He offers me his arm. I slide my hand through the crook of his elbow, feeling the solid, reassuring strength of his presence. We do not need a public relations team. We do not need to post defensive videos on the internet to plead our case to a jury of strangers. We are about to deliver the truth in person. We walk toward the towering mahogany double doors leading into the grand ballroom. Two uniformed event staff stand at attention, their hands resting on the brass handles. Malik gives them a subtle nod. The staff pull the heavy doors wide open. The sheer volume of the party washes over us, a chaotic blend of live jazz, clinking glassware, and hundreds of overlapping conversations. Malik and I step perfectly in sync across the threshold and into the light. It starts with the event coordinator standing near the entrance. She recognizes Malik immediately, her clipboard dropping slightly as she gasps. The silence spreads like a physical shockwave, rolling rapidly across the expansive room. The senior partners of the firm notice their supreme boss making a rare, unannounced appearance at a public gala, and they immediately stop talking. The hush ripples outward, infecting the surrounding tables. Within 30 seconds, a room packed with 500 of the most powerful people in Atlanta goes completely and utterly dead silent. Even the jazz band falters, the saxophone player lowering his instrument as he senses the massive shift in the atmosphere. Jamal is standing near the center ice sculpture, his young girlfriend clinging to his velvet jacket. He turns around, annoyed by the sudden quiet, expecting to see a politician or a celebrity. His eyes land on Malik, and the respectful smile begins to form on his face. Then his gaze shifts exactly 2 inches to the right and locks directly onto me. The cocktail glass slips straight out of Jamal's hand. It hits the marble floor, shattering into 100 glittering pieces. The sharp crashing sound echoes violently in the silent ballroom. Across the room, Preston physically stumbles backward, knocking into a cocktail table as he sees the lead forensic auditor of his federal investigation walking arm in arm with the billionaire owner of his firm. Chloe covers her mouth in sheer terror. Beatrice drops her clutch, her performative matriarch routine completely evaporating as she stares at the daughter. She just declared legally insane, standing radiant and triumphant at the pinnacle of societal power. They are staring at their executioners. The ultimate boss of the company has just arrived, and he brought the woman they tried to destroy. We do not stop walking. The crowd parts for us like the Red Sea yielding to an undeniable force of nature. I can feel the collective breath of 500 wealthy socialites and corporate sharks hitch in their throats. They are staring at my emerald gown and the absolute authority radiating from the man holding my arm. Malik guides me directly through the center of the grand ballroom, bypassing the terrified executives and the whispering church ladies. We walk straight up the carpeted stairs and onto the main stage. The jazz band has completely stopped playing. The silence in the room is so heavy and absolute it feels like a physical weight pressing down on the crowd. Malik steps up to the crystal podium. He reaches out and taps the microphone with a single confident finger. The sharp feedback echoes violently off the vaulted ceiling, snapping everyone to attention. He does not welcome them to a night of charity or offer a polite corporate greeting. He looks directly at the audiovisual team stationed in the balcony and gives a sharp nod. The heavy velvet curtains behind the stage part mechanically to reveal 3 massive digital projection screens. Malik grips the edges of the podium, and his deep voice fills the cavernous room. Tonight, we celebrate transparency. The screens illuminate with a blinding white light. A live financial dashboard appears in crisp high definition. I designed the interface myself, so even the most financially illiterate person in the room can understand exactly what they are looking at. The center screen displays the internal backend of Apex Financial. The left screen shows a highly detailed flowchart tracking the movement of stolen capital. The right screen displays the exact routing numbers and corporate registration documents for the offshore Delaware shell company. Malik speaks with ruthless precision. He points to the screens explaining the dummy account trap we set. He breaks down how the firm uncovered a massive embezzlement ring operating right under their noses. As he speaks, the digital display highlights the specific transactions. It shows fractions of percentages being skimmed from the retirement funds of elderly clients. It shows the money pooling into a shadow account. Then the screen flashes brilliant red as it displays the final catastrophic wire transfer of $2,500,000. The names of the account holders are projected in massive bold letters for the entire ballroom to see: Jamal and Preston. The collective gasp from the audience sounds like a sudden rush of wind. Wealthy investors scramble backward, physically distancing themselves from my husband and my brother-in-law as if their financial crimes are contagious. I look down at Jamal. His 24-year-old girlfriend looks up at the massive projection screen, sees the undeniable federal wire fraud evidence, and realizes her wealthy sugar daddy is about to become a federal inmate. The color drains completely from her face. She rips her arm away from his velvet jacket, staring at him in sheer terror before she physically backs away and disappears into the crowd of onlookers. Jamal is hyperventilating. His perfectly tailored suit suddenly looks like a prison uniform. He clutches his chest, gasping for air as the reality of his total destruction sets in. He looks around frantically for support, but his corporate friends are actively turning their backs on him. Across the room, Preston makes a desperate, panicked decision. He turns on his heel and sprints toward the heavy mahogany exit doors. He abandons his pregnant wife without a single backward glance, prioritizing his own survival over everything else. He makes it exactly 10 feet before 3 massive private security guards step directly into his path, crossing their arms and forming an impenetrable human wall. Preston crashes into them, stumbling backward and falling hard onto the polished marble floor. His sleek designer tuxedo is ruined and his arrogant facade is completely shattered. Malik steps back from the podium and hands the microphone directly to me. I step forward, holding the cool metal in my hand. I look down from the stage, locking my eyes squarely on the man who tried to discard me in a pre-op room. The entire ballroom waits in absolute stunned silence. I speak clearly, and my voice rings with unshakable power. A special thanks to my husband who texted for a divorce 15 minutes before my surgery. It gave me the free time to audit his entire life. The crowd erupts into shocked murmurs and loud gasps. Jamal drops to his knees, clutching his head in his hands. Before he can even formulate a single word of defense, the heavy brass doors at the back of the ballroom swing violently open. A dozen men and women wearing navy blue windbreakers walk aggressively into the room. The bold yellow letters printed across their backs read FBI. The federal agents do not care about the black tie dress code or the delicate floral arrangements. They march straight past the ice sculptures and the towering champagne pyramids, moving with terrifying tactical precision. 2 agents grab Jamal by his velvet jacket, hauling him forcefully to his feet and twisting his arms behind his back. The unmistakable sound of cold steel handcuffs clicking shut echoes over the frantic whispers of the elite crowd. Jamal begins to cry genuine panicked tears. He looks up at the stage, begging me to stop this, pleading that we are family and that he made a terrible mistake. I do not blink. I do not show a single ounce of mercy. I just watch the agents read him his Miranda rights in front of every single person he ever tried to impress. Across the ballroom, Preston is yanked up from the marble floor and slammed face first against the wall by another federal agent. The slick corporate lawyer is sobbing uncontrollably as the metal cuffs lock around his wrists. He is dragged out of the country club, leaving a trail of absolute disgrace in his wake. The feds do not just arrest the men. They came prepared for total asset forfeiture. The fallout over the next 48 hours is swift, brutal, and thoroughly documented by every local news outlet in the state. Because my mother Beatrice and my sister Chloe knowingly accepted stolen funds to pay off their personal debts and purchase luxury items, the federal government treats them as active beneficiaries of the embezzlement ring. The very next morning, a fleet of government vehicles pulls up to Chloe and her sprawling suburban mansion. Federal agents execute a sweeping seizure warrant. They confiscate everything purchased with the laundered money. They take the designer furniture, the imported sports cars, and the extravagant nursery decorations. They literally demand the diamond tennis necklace right off Chloe and her neck. She is left standing on her manicured front lawn, clutching her stomach with absolutely nothing to her name but a mountain of legal debt and a husband facing a decade in federal prison. Beatrice suffers a fate worse than financial ruin. She loses her social currency. The news of her complicity in the fraud and her horrific treatment of her sick daughter spreads like wildfire through the community. She tries to show up at her megachurch that Sunday morning dressed in her finest clothes, hoping to spin a new narrative of victimization. The head pastor meets her at the sanctuary doors and publicly asks her to leave the premises, citing her unethical behavior and the distraction she poses to the congregation. Her elite sorority sisters permanently block her phone number. The women she spent her entire life trying to impress completely erase her from their social registry. Her isolation is immediate, devastating, and absolute. A week later, my phone rings with an unregistered number. I answer it while sitting in my new luxury penthouse overlooking the city. It is Beatrice calling from a cheap prepaid burner phone because all of her personal banking accounts are frozen by the federal investigators. She is sobbing uncontrollably, gasping for air. She begs me to pay for a criminal defense attorney. She cries that she is an aging woman who cannot survive being penniless and publicly shunned. She pleads with me to remember that we share blood and that family must protect each other during hard times. I hold the phone to my ear, listening to her desperate manipulation tactics. I think about the moment she abandoned me in the hospital recovery room and tried to steal my safe deposit box key. I think about the decades of emotional abuse and the way she sold out my safety for a luxury vehicle. I am not built for a sick family, I say, repeating the exact phrase my ex-husband used to discard me. I press the end call button and drop the burner phone contact into my blocked list forever. I feel the final heavy chain of my past break away, leaving me completely unburdened. 365 days later, the air in Atlanta is crisp, and the morning sun is shining brilliantly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my oncologist clinic. I am sitting in the pristine white consultation room wearing a tailored white suit. The doctor walks in with a warm, genuine smile and hands me my latest medical scans. I read the clean, undeniable data on the page. I am 100% in remission. The cancer is completely eradicated from my body, leaving behind nothing but a small surgical scar and a profound sense of invincibility. I walk out of the clinic and step into a waiting black town car. The driver navigates through the bustling downtown traffic and pulls up to the steps of a beautiful historic courthouse. I am not walking up these marble steps to testify in a fraud trial or to sit through a grueling divorce deposition. Jamal is currently serving a 15-year sentence in a federal penitentiary, and Preston is sharing a cell block just 2 states over. Their fraudulent empire was burned to ash, and the stolen funds were meticulously returned to every single elderly client they targeted. I step out of the car and look up at the towering columns of the courthouse. Malik is waiting for me at the top of the stairs. He looks incredibly handsome in a sharp charcoal suit, the sunlight catching the warm affection in his dark eyes. He holds his hand out to me, a silent, steady promise of genuine partnership and unwavering respect. I walk up the steps and place my hand firmly in his. I kept my reckless hospital bed promise to the stranger who saw my worth when everyone else treated me like a liability. We did not just survive the betrayal. We completely destroyed the villains who tried to bury me. We protected our peace, eliminated the toxic rot from our lives, and built an unbreakable empire together. True wealth is not defined by the money in your bank account or the restrictive labels your family places on you. It is the peace you fiercely protect and the absolute boundaries you refuse to compromise. My husband and my family thought my illness made me weak. They were wrong. Hitting rock bottom gave me the perfect solid foundation to rebuild an empire without their toxic weight holding me down. Blood does not make a family, but unwavering loyalty and genuine respect do. If you have ever walked away from toxic relatives to protect your peace, hit the subscribe button.